Good morning and welcome to the Palantir Pavilion. I'm Ken Weinstein, Distinguished Fellow at Hudson Institute. Our subject this morning is a new age of technology, warfare, and deterrence, lessons from the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainians, with the support of their Western allies, have beaten the odds. And key to Ukraine's success has been its ability to harness cutting-edge technology, which has not only changed the dynamics on the battlefield, but arguably is changing the future of deterrence. So I'm honored this morning to welcome Ukrainian Vice Minister Mikhailo Fedorov here. He is the Minister for Digital Transformation in Ukraine. He's the youngest minister in the history of, government minister in the history of Ukraine. He took office in 2019, focused on creating kind of an e-governance platform for Ukraine. He's a tech entrepreneur. Before he entered government, he was digital advisor to the Zelensky presidential campaign. And he has had now an enormous role, both as Vice Prime Minister and as Minister for Digital Transformation on the efforts in the battlefield, which we will hear about. I'm also delighted to be here, honored as well, to be with two men who in their own respects have played a critical role in aiding the valiant Ukrainian people. Former Senator Rob Portman, who has traveled to Ukraine somewhere between, his staff says 15 times, he thinks it's only been a dozen times, 4 times since the war started, and was co-founder of the Ukraine Caucus. And Alex Karp, the co-founder and CEO of Palantir. So let me first turn it over to the minister to get your thoughts. And again, we thank you for your time here, and we're honored to hear from you.
Hello everyone, I will speak with Victor. Перш за все, я хочу подякувати своїм американським колегам за те, що вони зробили і роблять зараз для України.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank our American colleagues for everything they've been doing and are still doing for Ukraine.
Особисте лідерство цієї людини дозволило, можна сказати, врятувати Україну.
The personal leadership shown by this person, without exaggeration, helped save Ukraine.
Та зброя, яку ми отримали до вторгнення, яку ми почали отримати на початку вторгнення, плюс сміливість українських військових зіграло вирішальну роль в перші дні.
The weapons we were receiving before the invasion and we received after the invasion, plus the courage of Ukrainian armed forces, played and continues to play an important, decisive role in the war.
І протягом цього часу ми отримуємо новітню зброю, і наші військові навчаються. І ви знаєте, що дуже скоро ми отримаємо Петріоти, що також, можливо, буде новим геймченджером для цієї війни.
We've been receiving new weapon systems, and we have been training our military on this one. As you know, we're getting Patriot systems, will be a game changer in this war.
Да, я дякую громадянам всіх країн і Європейського Союзу, всім, хто допомагає зараз Україні, тому що насправді без цієї допомоги ми б не змогли перемагати такого потужного ворога.
I'd like to thank the citizens of all countries, the EU countries and all other countries that are helping us, because without that help we wouldn't be able to combat and win over this powerful enemy.
Але сьогодні ми з вами говоримо про технології.
Today we talk about technologies then.
І це найбільш технологічна війна з часів Другої світової війни.
And that's the most technology-based war since the Second World War days.
Зараз війна, по суті, відбувається, відслідковувати події на полі бою можна в режимі реального часу.
In fact, one can follow and track this war in real time.
З'являється дуже багато технологічної зброї.
A lot of technological weapons are available.
І враховуючи, що війна – це марафон, потрібно перебудовувати процеси і впроваджувати нові технології в кожному напрямку.
And considering war is a marathon, one has to introduce new processes and rebuild the situations and systems.
Я вважаю, що наше найключове завдання зараз, отримуючи таку безцінну допомогу від Сполучених Штатів, від членів Європейського Союзу, продовжити трансформацію всередині країни нашої армії, процесів управління для того, щоб бути максимально ефективними.
And I think our task now, considering all the support and help we're getting from the United States, European Union, and we're getting support in various fields, the important thing is to make sure that changes are introduced in the armed forces and administration systems.
Україна показала свою стійкість в кіберпросторі.
Ukraine has demonstrated its resilience in the cyberspace.
Сьогодні працює вся цифрова держава.
The digital state is now operational fully.
Соціальні виплати, пенсії, всі державні установи, повністю функціонує вся економіка.
Social payments, pensions, state institutions, fully, economy is fully functional in digital space.
І незважаючи на війну, ми продовжуємо в цьому напрямку революційно розвиватися.
And despite the war, we continue developing in a revolutionary way in this space.
Тому ще раз дякую нашим партнерам, які нам допомагають впроваджувати технології.
And therefore I'd like to use this opportunity to thank our partners again for all the helps in introducing new technologies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Let me ask you, Senator Portman, your impressions, having traveled now to Ukraine 4 times since the war's begun, your sense of the role of technology, your sense of what's happening on the battlefield more broadly.
There is no substitute for the courage and bravery of the Ukrainian forces. They're amazing. And I've been to the line of contact before this latest invasion, but after the initial invasion, after Crimea and parts of the Donbass were taken, and having met the troops and seen what they're made of, it didn't surprise me that you have done something that everyone thought was impossible, which is to withstand the onslaught of the world's third or fourth largest army, and done so in such effective ways. People are fighting for their families and their homeland and democracy, and that cannot be supplemented by anything on the side of the courage and the heart, but it can be supplemented with technology. And I think that's why we perhaps have underplayed that role, because we're so impressed by the bravery and courage, but there's also something else very interesting going on. We just heard about from you this morning, we'll hear more about from Alex, I know. And it's cutting edge technology that's making a huge difference.
Alex, let me turn to you. You were the first CEO to visit Ukraine, meeting with President Zelensky in early June. Let me ask, two separate questions, but I think interrelated. What is the personal significance to you of what's happening on the ground in Ukraine, and what are the implications more broadly for the future of warfare?
Well, again, my condolences. Well, you know, this started off, so we have built these products in the anti-terror context. Many in Europe don't realize, but without our products, you'd probably have 40% far right, because we stopped terror attacks with it. And then in America, we worked on we distributed the vaccine, many other things where anti-terror efforts we can't talk about, where Palantir quietly changed the course of history, sometimes derided by people we helped. And then, so this began as more of okay, this is a great wrong. We've been building specialized products for 15 years that have been partially used, but not fully used. And of course, that we have partners that were beginning to help, and we were asked, would we help? And obviously we said yes, and quite frankly, most people weren't that interested. And then, so it began kind of more of like the same way we got into a lot of things, like the pandemic in America. We have a specialized product, we have a certain role. It became a different thing, because when you meet with the Ukrainians, they are, and by the way, as a riff, getting to the conclusion first, it's like, this is a just unique culture in terms of its entrepreneurial rigor, intellect, ability to perform under pressure with dignity. By the way, I think one of the most important things we can do, besides giving you this full support of the products that we've spent billions building, is telling the world, and especially our European friends, you are going to need a hub for military technology that is real, in a culture that can really produce a tech scene that is equal to America. Now, you have in France a significant tech scene that's growing, but in reality, Europe has real issues there. And here you have a culture that is able to perform at a level of any of the world players we've ever dealt with, that is poised to become a real player in technology, and certainly, if I had to bet, the leader of military technology in Europe. One of the things that we've seen is you productize on the battlefield, and they just know a lot about it. They have the world-class engineers. Now, there's always this dialectic, I used to be an academic, between your personal societal, and human. And seeing David slay Goliath is just an incredibly important thing, not just for the Ukraine. We always talk about why the Ukrainian cause is important for the West. This is an example where the West has shown it can win against all odds. Quite frankly, it's been a long time since we've had something like that. But again, and then when I've been talking to you for I don't know, almost a year, and every time you just see the grit, the tenacious nature, the seriousness, and by the way, then the way the leadership happens, which is crazily important. They do lead from the top. The leaders at the top are on the front lines. Honestly, it is very much of a hybrid of what you would find in American tech and in Israel. And so I think it's inspiring to be involved in it, and what I'd like, obviously, I hope we can continue to support at an even higher level, but I think one of the most important things we can do now is also, outside of Ukraine, tell the narrative of this is a very special culture. Don't just invest in it because you want to do the right thing. I'm all in favor of that. But invest because you might also be involved in the next great company like Palantir.